My name is Malinda. I am from Nairobi, Kenya, and I'm based in Rotterdam. What I was thinking about what is an African museum is that I think of the museum in Nairobi, the National Museum of Kenya. What they exhibit in their exhibitions, in their spaces, is not unlike what you would see in an ethnographic museum in Europe. And so I find that interesting, because then what does that say about what we're saying about ourselves? Like, how are we looking at ourselves if it's similar to how the West is looking at us? When you have objects that are taken from or out of their space of functionality, then if you get into dialogue with the object or with its new space, then actually stories get told. They had dolls that were like fertility objects or had some kind of quality that was ascribed to them. And once taken out of that context, they no longer exhibit these qualities. And so when you look at it as an aesthetic object, then it becomes something completely different. You know, Peter and I are working to investigate how, in particular, certain objects in the Danish museum have been exhibited. The idea that a lot of the objects that were accrued during colonialism were primarily functional objects in their places of origin, and they are brought to the West and ascribe certain aesthetic values that they didn't originally have. And then they come to represent an Africa that is a unitarian identity of a huge land. And I feel personally as an African that it's not accurate they're not accurate in their representation and how they're exhibited and how the shows are curated here. Because the objects are tangible things that are there, that you can see, that you're supposed to be able to touch, but you're not allowed to touch. Yeah. This quality of ambiguity and impermanence is something that we would like to discover with a performance work. And so the idea that we've come up with is to have conversations within the museum space about one object and start on a micro scale, and then go even bigger, going with the circumference of the object. So object on the table, object in the room, object in the corridor, object in ethnographies, object in museum architecture. Because a conversation in itself is impermanent and ephemeral, the actual performance will be in a sense a detritus of the performance. So we're going to record and measure the performance with, for example, the decibels that will be reached during the performance, how long, the statistics of how long each person talks during the conversation, the blood pressure of each person, for example, and also witnesses. If there are people in the museum, then we will get them to sign a declaration saying they witnessed this conversation.
So we decided not to use the university as our starting point, but a museum display. And the most controversial museum display of African artifacts we have in this country is at National Museum. This display has been there for 24 years, and they've even lost their institutional memory. The museum simply can no longer remember why things are exhibited like that, because the curator who did it retired sort of 20 years ago and died 10 years ago. So what we have is a collection of things, and we decided to visit the museum and give it a good look. Naturally, I saw as the person represented there got quite unhappy, and I, as a gallery studies teacher, became quite unhappy with my own practice as well, because I could see that there's a lot there that enabled me to analyse these things, but nothing to put feeling into it. And some of the displays were aesthetic as well, but it didn't teach you anything. So anyway, we were talking about representations, and how things are made to represent people, cultures, phenomena that are not present in the world as such. We agreed that the thing as such, displayed in such a way, does not have the power to speak for itself. It needs words. So what you want is an empty object that can be manipulated with in order to make it speak. So what Arthur did was she had a number of boxes which she painted brown. Brown because everything in the African display is brown. It is. African artifacts are brown, so we'll collect the brown things. Everybody who comes back from Africa tells you, wow, it's such a colourful continent, but there's not a sign, not a trace of colour in the display. It's a brown boxes. And then she picked out one person at a time, told them how to do it, now paint it brown, thank you very much, and then she would put it on display. And then the next thing would come out. Meanwhile, I giving a lecture, a PowerPoint presentation that showed all the facts that we had, and I was reading out the minutes and seconds we were speaking in real time. Museums of cultural history have this strange idea that they have to make multi-million dollar displays. Like if they reinstall their collections, it's going to cost millions, and it's expected to stand as it is for like 10 years or something. And National is no exception. So you have a lot of departments that look after different regions of the world, different periods in time, etc., and they all want lots of money. So if you go to it like that, you might have to wait for a long time before it's returned. Arthur can put them in touch with various African curators who would have very helpful views on how to install objects in such a way as not to sort of directly offend the represented culture. This would be fantastic spin-off, but it's not central to our object, our project. Because what we were interested in was looking at how the history of the display of ethnographic artifacts intersects with academic practice and artistic practice, how it can influence those two, and how it can acquire different shapes in those two disciplines. No more than that.